January 22nd, year 2022. It all began on a cold night in the village Yurievka in the Omsk region of Russia. An elderly resident of the village woke up to a knock on the window at night. When she approached the window, there was no one there. She noticed that the light was on in her neighbor's window and assumed that perhaps the head of the family living next door, Roman Ignatenko, had been drinking that night. Nadia and Dima, Roman's stepchildren, were the ones who were knocking on her window. When they didn't get a response, they ran to other neighbors for help. The neighbors opened the door and Nadia told them that some man with a knife had broken into their house. The neighbors called the police. Soon the police arrived and they saw something that shocked them. The bodies of Nadia and Dima's parents were lying on the floor. In another room, they found a body of Nadia's 10-year-old sister, Katya. The victims were stabbed a total of 30 times. For such a small village, what happened was a complete shock. Based on Nadia's description, police created a composite sketch of the perpetrator, which was quickly distributed in the media and on social networks. She described the man as being 45-50 years old, average height with a slender build and wrinkled, weathered face. He was wearing a black hat, a black short jacket, dark pants, and short winter boots. At first, detectives thought that it was possible that killer came from Kazakhstan. He was not a local, otherwise Nadia would have recognized him. However, doubts quickly arose about this version. Yurievka is a border zone, and a foreigner can only enter it with the approval of border control. But no one matching the description provided by Nadia passed through the border recently. Moreover, no locals matched this description either. The whole country learned about this shocking murder. Federal forensic experts and investigators were sent from Moscow to Omsk. They were tasked with finding the suspects in this crime as quickly as possible. They were already working on site the next morning. The Yurievka village had about 1,000 residents and detectives questioned every one of them. But still, they had no clues except Nadia's description of the murder. He seemed to have just vanished. Due to the lack of leads, the police decided to investigate the Ignatenko family more closely to understand if any of their acquaintances or friends could be involved in the murder. The family was formed a few years ago when a mother, Alexandra, with her 3 children, Nadia, Dima, and Katya, moved to live with Roman and his son in Yurievka. The children immediately became close, and there were no conflicts. Roman and Alexandra were very responsive and loved their children. Roman worked on a farm and also had a farm of his own. His biological son studied at a college in Omsk. Alexandra's eldest daughter, Nadia, who reported to the neighbors about the murder, was a schoolgirl. She had average grades and was active in local events, engaged in amateur activities, and participated in history championships. The middle daughter, Katya, had many health problems and was disabled. Nadia had to take care of her, but there weren't any signs that it annoyed her. She was posting photographs on social media with her sister, and they seemed happy on them. In the meantime, the villagers were spreading rumors about potential murders. Acquaintances and colleagues of murdered parents fell under suspicion. But then something happened that no one expected. The detectives' attention was increasingly drawn to inconsistencies in the stories of the murdered couple's daughter, Nadia. She said that she and her younger brother, Dima, had escaped through a small window as soon as they heard someone break into the house. However, when she went to the neighbors to report the attack, both she and her brother were wearing winter coats. Also, the window leaf they allegedly climbed through was too narrow even for a child to fit through without a winter coat. To dispel all the doubts, detectives asked Nadia to show how she was able to crawl through the window leaf, as she claimed, wearing a winter coat. They went with her to the scene of the crime, but she couldn't fit through it. When the detectives decided to talk to Nadia's 6-year-old brother Dima, he said that Nadia covered his ears and eyes on the night of the murder, so he didn't see or hear anything that happened. Soon the detectives learned that 14-year-old Nadia was seeing 17-year-old Alexander, but her parents did not approve of their relationship. They considered Alexander to be too old and unreliable boyfriend. Investigators decided to learn more about Alexander. He was an average teenager. He did not study very well, but he didn't miss classes either. He played volleyball and even participated in district competitions. Also, Alexander had no criminal record, but he had a dark spot in his biography. Locals remembered that the boy was on the register of local juvenile commission because once he tried to set a house on fire. But in any case, everyone who knew him described him as a calm and balanced person. Nadia and Alexander had known each other for a long time, but about 2 months ago, Nadia's parents began forbidding them to see each other, and Alexander would come up to her at night when her parents were asleep, and Nadia would go outside and they would talk. The fact that there were so many inconsistencies in Nadia's story and that she couldn't explain much about the night of the murder made her and her boyfriend persons of interest for the investigation. It could have been possible that soon police got some additional evidence of their involvement in crime, but they were not disclosed. However, soon Nadia and Alexander became the main suspects in the triple murder case. Alexander was arrested. He was still in the same village, and he was at home. He did not try to escape, thinking that no one will suspect him. By that time, Nadia had been taken to another village to live with relatives. A separate group went to arrest her. After a while, as reported by Original Investigative Committee, the young man and the girl began to confess during interrogations. Soon, Alexander led the investigators to the place where he threw away the sharpened bayonet and a blood-stained clothes. After obtaining confessions during interrogation, the pieces of the puzzle began to come together for investigators and police in a clear picture. According to Alexander's words, Nadia had been pushing him towards the murder for quite some time. She was so mad that her parents didn't allow her to date Alexander that this was how she decided to get them out of her way to be with her boyfriend. She also wanted him to kill her sister Katya because she didn't want to take care of her anymore. When her mother forbade Nadia from seeing Alexander, she started urging him to kill her family, and it lasted for a long time. However, they did not decide to start acting on this plan right away. They were discussing this murder for many months, and apparently Alexander didn't really try to convince Nadia not to do it. At some point, Nadia wanted to poison her family with sleeping pills. She even calculated little doses for her stepfather, mother, and sister. But later, they decided that she will just let Alexander in during nighttime so he could do everything with a knife. According to the interrogation protocol, the final plan was hatched on Friday, January 21st, at a school disco. After the party, Alexander bought garbage bags and went to sleep. He probably had been drunk. At midnight, he took a knife and the bags and went to Nadia's house. She opened the door for him. He took off his shoes and quietly entered the house. He approached the sleeping stepfather, Roman, and began to stab him with a knife. Roman suddenly woke up and resisted, waking everyone in the room. During the struggle, Nadia's mother Alexandra tried to hide behind the cupboard, but Alexander dealt with Roman and then returned to her and started stabbing Alexandra with a knife. He couldn't kill anyone on the first try, as the wounded tried to escape from the house, but he came back to each one and finished them off. After being wounded in the stomach, Alexandra ran into the hallway. The killer did not pursue her and returned to defenseless 10-year-old Katya, who was standing on her knees in her room. After dealing with her, he went to finish off Alexandra, who was trying to open the door and escape. The young man again stabbed her several times with the knife and then returned to the room when he found little Katya still alive, even after she was stabbed in the neck. Alexander hit her on the head and the face with the wooden handle of the knife. While this was happening, Nadia was hiding with her younger brother Dima under the table, and she was covering his ears and eyes. It might sound weird, but Nadia really loved her younger brother, despite the fact that she wanted all of the other family members of hers dead. And she probably might have thought that after she will get rid of her family, she will be able to raise Dima herself. When all of the three victims stopped moving, Alexander came up to Nadia and told her to run to the neighbors and tell them about the unknown attacker. Later, the investigators will be shocked by the amount of blood on the walls and floor. They counted more than 20 stab wounds on Roman and at least 5 on Alexandra and Katya. After the murder, Alexander ran away, threw away the knife, burned the socks in the stove, and washed his clothes. Nadia grabbed her younger brother and ran to the neighbors for help. At that time, when they were not under suspicion, the couple decided to meet again, which they did. The interest in the trial was enormous. Immediately after the murder, the entire country saw a composite sketch of the alleged killer and read all sorts of versions of what happened. The fact that the murder was done by teenagers shocked everyone. Since the defendants were minors, the trial was held in a closed session. Also underage can be sentenced to the maximum possible punishment of 10 years in prison. So, on March 2nd, 2023, the court sentenced at the time 18-year-old Alexander to 6 years and 7 months in prison and 15-year-old Nadia to 6 years and 6 months in a juvenile prison. So this loving couple probably wouldn't be able to see each other soon, and probably they never will, because usually couples like this stop communicating after the prison sentence because it's common that they blame each other for what happened. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.